I have a Mac computer. I've always had a Mac since when I was in NID. That's a great story over there. When we were students in NID, Apple did this wonderful thing where all over the world, and Rajiv knows it very well, he's one of the mavericks, the champions there. They, they created these Apple labs in design schools all over the world. We were very lucky to have one in NID. As I said, Rajiv was an expert. He was fantastic, but it's amazing the journey that I've seen. So I had to talk about user research today, and just like Uday, I don't like the word user. I'll talk a little bit about it. I like the word patron more. But through my design education, I've seen the whole journey of the Macintosh, not just the iPhone today, but the Mac Plus, and worked on that. Photoshop version 1, where you cut and paste something and it's gone. Nothing happens after that. It's fixed. So it's been quite a journey and some fantastic conversations this morning. Uday's talk, Dr. Ranjan's, talk about the value of design and research and what they're going to do in Hyderabad with code. So I think it's very, very exciting what Ripple talked about, and which I'll talk a little bit about, which is, the business aspect of research, business aspect of design. All of that, I think I'll share not in terms of, things that you should do, but my conversation today is really about a couple of, case studies, some of which have inspired me, some of which I've been a part of. But I think the value that you can take from that is what my talk is really about, which is, how do you take empathy, which is really at the crux of conducting research. How do you take empathy and walk it forward? And if you look at kindness, the description of kindness is, acting with empathy. So to me, the journey doesn't end with empathy. You got to walk that forward, and acting on empathy is really acting with kindness. And that takes a lot of, business thinking, a lot of decisions that need to be made with respect to profitability, impact, all of that. So through some of the case studies I'll share today, I hope, you get a sense of across various industries how we brought that live. If I can have the next slide, please. And this is truly human-centered design because I can't use a controller, she's doing it. So thanks, Kushi. So today, the three things I'll talk about really are the power of empathy and kindness in design innovation. Empathy in action, how does empathy spark radical new solutions, and how do you create disproportionate value and sustainable business impact? And the very important aspect of the changing role of the researcher. And thank you, Mayank, wherever you are. I can't see you right now. There you are. In our initial conversation where he asked me what you're going to present, and he was after my life and I was very busy. He said, we got to have you walk me through it. I kept pushing the date by almost a month. But these words that are there actually came from Mayank, The role of the researcher today is, I believe, not just about uncovering unmet needs. You need to work with organizations, you need to work with your partners to win trust, build belief, and then execute on what you found. So I think the role of a good researcher is expanding, just as the role of a designer is also. Next slide, please. Something Uday said about AI, and I know a couple of people who have approached me at Studio 5B using what they call synthetic AI, synthetic ways of conducting research. They create, you enter a profile, and the AI creates responses based on the profile, whether you want to hear from a doctor, nurse, and you get responses, and that becomes a kind of way to conduct research. But really, you don't know what happened if you weren't there. These words are not by me, it's actually coming from what you're going to see next. And if you can press play. This was really to warm everyone up, but somehow it's not working.
You know what it's like to be on
the idea was to warm everyone up with this music, but I think the boys already did that before.
Girlfriends, don't talk to me about rock and roll. I'm not there in the clubs and on the streets, and I'm
Put up the volume a bit,
I am rock and roll.
So the words come from this song. I find this very inspiring, and I'll tell you why later. Just the volume a little bit. Make people up here. Body shaking and stuff already happened, but I was going to get you guys to get up and shake. But everybody knows what band this is. No, huh? You there? No? You know the band? You can listen to the words, they're quite apt actually.
What do you think you were created for? So is it care? So is it
you why this song is, apart from the fact that it keeps going, but we are before lunch, so.
Take it or leave it.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the song. I was going to ask, does anybody know? But surprisingly, nobody knows the band here. It also indicates my age, but anyway. So this is a song called Born to Raise Hell by a metal band called Motorhead. In fact, I'm running away this evening, Mayank, because there's a big metal concert in Bangalore tomorrow. So this song is special to me, not just because of the entire sort of vibe of the song, but the title of the song is Born to Raise Hell. And I think that's exactly opposite of what we as designers do. Our job is, if you go to the next slide, I like to play on the words. Our job is really to raise hell. If I look at the job of a designer, you remove all the friction points possible that you can. And that to me is what design is all about. And design can't do that alone. You got to do it with research. This journey begins with understanding what unmet needs are all about. And it doesn't end there. You got to take it forward. Next slide, please. And just like that quote, you don't know what happened if you weren't there. There's another quote which I find very inspiring. I was very fortunate to have been taught by a gentleman who co-founded IDEO. He's passed away, 2 years ago. Bill Mogridge. He's credited with having, designed the first laptop. There are various models that qualify for the first laptop, but Bill Mogridge's industrial design for the first foldable laptop, the way he designed the circuits, etc., really was the precursor of the laptops that we have today. It was called the Grid Compass. So he designed the first laptop. I was very fortunate to be taught by him when I was studying in Italy. And he also kind of founded or coined the term interaction design, along with another gentleman called Bill Verplank from HCI. And what he says, the only way to experience an experience is to experience it. And that has stuck with me, because that is what research is about. Now, during COVID, I know, because I was in another healthcare company then, and we were trying to conduct research. Doctors did not want to talk to people, so it was very crazy. You're talking to a doctor, standing 20 feet apart, a plastic curtain in the way. He's trying to shout, you're trying to shout. It was crazy. So then you do it on Zoom, and then so many Zoom calls happened, and then people started saying, hey, is this really human-centered design? Or, very interesting term, somebody said, human-centered design. So, is it now human-centered design? So, the examples I'm going to share with you today, really, if you go to the next slide, please, talk about, number one, empathy, taking that empathy forward into actions that are considerate and inclusive and humane, which is really about, acting with kindness, and why both matter. Empathy alone is not going to take you to, the end product or to create impact. You can do a great need-finding project, but if it does not go forward, if you don't create belief, then that's a sad loss to you, what you believe in, the people that you've spoken with, and the possibilities of what could have been. Equally important, you can't just sit on a table and think, hey, I'm going to make a great product because people need it. And you act with kindness, but there's no sort of reason behind why you're doing what you're doing. So I think a combination of both is very, very important. And that, in my mind, makes a good design. And I'll just talk through a couple of examples, to bring this alive. Next slide, please. So the first one I'm going to talk about is, what you see here is a head designer from GE called Doug Dietz. He designed the MRI machines for GE. A lot of folks here probably have read about this case study in the Creative Futures book, which was written by, the founders of IDEO, David Kelly and his brother Tom Kelly. But I'll just share it here anyways, because it's a very interesting example of, a highly complex product. An industrial designer, very qualified, made a fantastic product, went to study in Stanford, where they told him the first thing you need to do is, watch your machine in action. And that totally transformed the way he viewed his product. And this is what he said about his product after seeing people using it. He said, the machine that I designed was basically just a brick with a hole. Next one. So the MRI machine, if some of you have had the misfortune of being in one, it's very intimidating. The sounds, you don't know when it's going to end. The way the room is structured, just like you see in this image. This is what it was. But then, after his course at Stanford, this is what he did. Next slide, please. Completely transformed the experience, especially for children, because when he went to watch an MRI machine, he happened to see a girl walking in for a pre-scheduled checkup, and she was crying. She's in extreme trauma. Her mother couldn't drag her in. The nurses couldn't administer the medications that needed to be administered, and it had a deep impression on him. And I've got a short video which I'll play. But all of that made him not right now. So all of that sort of made him think about this in a very different way. He could not change the machines because it's highly complex engineering. But what do you do? How do you make the experience better? And that comes through observation, through research. And they made this GE Adventure series, which completely transformed the MRI sort of experience for children. Next one, please. Yeah. Yeah, you can play it.
Hi, I'm Doug Dietz. I'm the principal designer for global design at GE Healthcare, and I'm the lead designer for Adventure Series. The Adventure Series is really an activity that we've been working on to see what can we do around our diagnostic imaging equipment to make it friendlier for both the family and for young patients. We have large diagnostic imaging equipment at GE Healthcare. They're huge, and some of them make noises. Adventure Series is really looking at it really from the child's perspective, looking at where their anxiety points are and coming up with some really nice solutions that help those, whether those are visually taking over the room in a theme, like a jungle theme or a pirate adventure or something, as well as music that leads them into the room and coloring books. But we wanted to have elements that addressed all the anxiety points.
Absolutely. So by doing this, if you go to the next slide, they didn't just do something which was, a nice experience. It actually created massive business impact. There was huge patient satisfaction. People actually wanted to come to hospitals that had the GE machines. It increased operational efficiency within hospitals because nurses did not have to, go through the sort of, challenges that they had to, administer medicine on children. And of course, there's a positive brand value as well. So this simple action, and they did not do anything on the industrial design side. It was really thinking smartly about what you already have. You're not changing the machine, but it created dramatic sort of business impact. So that's one example. Next one, please. This is something Philips did about 3 years later, building on the same idea, but they extended it to, Philips works a lot with, those of you who've been with Philips, they work a lot with, the ambient aspect of the devices that they make, whether it is televisions there, where the light spills outside the screen, and they've been doing all these experiments. So they created this ambient experience for Philips MRI machines, where they actually partnered with Disney to create spaces where the entire space had sounds and visuals, and the entire experience became a very, very different one. Again, the impact, you can see the numbers there that it had for Philips. So yeah, next slide, please. So all of this actually is inspired by the thinking around universal design and inclusive design. I don't want to confuse you all too much, but universal design actually emerged, and this lady that you see here, Patricia Moore, an amazing example of an industrial designer who conducted research. And I'll tell you what she did. In the 70s, she was the only lady in an industrial design company in the US run by this very sort of iconic industrial designer called Raymond Loewy, the only woman there. And they would design Cadillacs and all these flashy things, shiny steel objects. And she said, we need to consider other people in society who are often ignored. For example, the old. So what did she do? She actually, and she was, in her 20s then, she, made herself dressed up like an older person, made herself feel like an older person as much as possible. For example, she would wear glasses, wear, some of the very thick lenses, and some of them very cloudy, so she couldn't see very clearly. She wore shoes with, different heights. The heels were different, so she had to limp. She tied up her arms so she couldn't move them very well. And she did all of this exploring the streets of US for 3 years to understand what it means to be old. And that is research. That's research in action. And then she translated these learnings into the industrial design products that she went on to design post that. And she's just recently been awarded, I think, by the World Design Organization, Lifetime Achievement Award or something. But she was essentially considered as the leader of universal design. But now that thinking is kind of moved to a different kind of way of looking at design, and inclusive design is a bit different. Universal design was make one object accessible to as many people as possible. Inclusive design, mainly for digital, is within a product, how do you give options for multiple people to use it? So next slide, please. A great example of that is the Xbox Adaptive Controller by Microsoft. There are many people from Microsoft here. Great example of, one of the engineers, he happened to see that there's a website where veterans who, are handicapped are visiting and trying to see how they can personalize the Xbox controllers based on their, disabilities. He said, this is a great idea. Why don't we do this with our product? And then Xbox did this. They made a controller. If you go to the next slide, please. They made a controller where it's highly personalizable, and they worked with multiple people with many sort of disabilities to understand, what should they do, how open should they make this platform, and as you can read some of the quotes here, the possibilities were endless. People loved it. Not just that. If you go to the next slide. Again, what is the impact of all of this? So the key impact, if you see the last line, keeping the sales figures aside, because that did, obviously there's not that much scale to it, but there's so much more that it did for Microsoft, right? Enhance the brand image, it led to, market expansion into categories they had not gone to before, and a couple of people from Microsoft know this better than me. It signaled to the world the design innovation that Microsoft is looking to do, and it talked about, Microsoft's brand values. So all of that has significant impact. And this is, again, kindness in action. You begin with empathy, you do something about it, and that is kindness, this empathy in action. Next slide, please. Another great example, how much time do I have? Because I don't want to, okay, cool. So this is a great example that has always inspired me and my team at Studio 5B when we think about patient-centric design. This is an example of, leading with design to create impact. So this lady, Deborah Adler, was a student at the New York College of Fine Arts. And she was privy to this unfortunate incident where her grandmother, who was a Holocaust survivor, she survived the Holocaust, but she almost didn't survive this incident, where in the US, she consumed her husband's medicines by mistake. And it was a near fatal incident. Now, why did that happen? Because of the sort of bottles that you see here, which is still the way prescription bottles are largely sold in the US. And it's so difficult to read. It's the same amber-colored bottle. And she said, I need to do something about this. So she did a student project where she looked at the design of, a medicine bottle. What should it be? And there were some fantastic innovations she did. Target loved her product, and they, started using her designs to dispense medicines in Target. Next. So amazing stuff that she did, right? You had colored rings that you can put on different bottles below the lid, so you can personalize whose medicine is what. Very clear readability. You've got this, pull-out card that tells you what is this medicine, what is the molecule, and fantastic. There was a little bit of a, magnifying kind of sheet for people who find it difficult to read to actually read better. Amazing product. Next, it's 2005. And then she created her entire design language around it, whether it's graphics, whether it's, extending it from one format to multiple formats to injections as well. And then next one, please. The impact of this was the Industrial Design Society of America actually gave her the Design of the Decade Award in 2010. And this is part of the permanent collection in the Museum of Modern Art. And in 2015, now here's where business comes in. Great product, users love it. 2015, CVS acquired Target. And they said, listen, we need to get rid of this because it is it's not falling in place with our larger operational efficiencies. We are filling bottles. Now, these bottles are different. Our machines can't fill those bottles, so they took it away. But here's the voice of the customer. People actually began to look for their old bottles in trash and where they'd kept it away. Their old Target bottles, and to fill medicines in that to use because they loved the design so much. If you go to the next one, a couple of quotes from that year, 2016, where people said they only went to Target because of this design, because of this product. And they began reusing these old bottles. Now, for those of you who don't know about the US, your big pharmacies are sort of, people make a choice where they want it fulfilled, or they can tell their doctor they want it fulfilled here or there. So there's a big business angle to where prescriptions are being fulfilled. So people were going to see, to Target to fulfill their prescriptions because of a design that mattered. That's a big deal. So clearly good design matters, and addressing unmet needs matters greatly. So next one, please. At Dr. Reddy's, at our Studio 5B, we were also very, very inspired. This is a project when I was at IDEO that we had begun with Dr. Reddy's, where we said that, listen, let's relook at packaging of bottles and flat packs. Let's look at them in a way that's differentiated. And we were inspired by that. And yeah, next one, please. We did the entire gamut of, I'll not go into what kinds of research, but the entire gamut of, talking to people, understanding doctors, patients, understanding unmet needs, to the point where I also insisted on having our CEO, who's now MD at Dr. Reddy's, Mr. G.V. Prasad, come to the house of one of the patients. Actually, not a patient. This is a mother whose son was suffering from a cough. She didn't know who he was. He parked his Mercedes-Benz way behind somewhere. He walked into a small gully in Hyderabad. He was there listening to her, understanding what she's saying about this product. And what she was really talking about, we were talking about a cough mixture bottle. And she was saying, I open the bottle and then ants come in, the whole product gets wasted. I can't, when I pour liquid in it, I can't see, what is the level in the cap. I can't clean the cap properly. And he was listening to all of this, and obviously so was I. And the important part about this was, if you go to the next slide. So I'll talk about that product first. The important part of that was just the voice of one user. The voice of one user actually was enough for us to make design changes in the product, which actually led to, we made a product, and I'll show you examples of it later, a product that was drip-free. It did not drip, after pouring the cough mixture, it didn't drip anymore. So there was no issue of ants coming in. We created a different kind of cap you could hold, so there's a very clear marking of how much of the medicine you poured out. And the cap had rounded corners inside, so it was very easy to clean. All of this was done, obviously it comes at a cost, but the impact of this was there's 30% more business for that product when it was launched, because doctors loved the product, because patients loved the product. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So that was in the bottles front, but we also looked at, flat packs, how should we redesign? There are a couple of prototypes we tested. Researchers also taped their fingers to see, is this an arthritis patient? How easy it is to open a pack, how easy can we make it? Can we make portable medicine? All of that. So you see some prototypes. Next one, please. And then, this translated, these examples actually translated to real world products. And this was launched in 2017, where we understood from people that, listen, and some of you have seen these kind of products. Now, a lot of people are doing this, but this was one of the first to do it. People had said when we work with flat packs, number one, when you put it in a pack or in your purse, the corners are too sharp, it pokes my hand, etc. Second is expiry date is printed all over the pack. When you punch out the medicine, you don't know, is this one expired, is it not? You don't know batch numbers. So he said, listen, you need to print all of that on a separate piece of real estate outside of the pill. And we did that. Patients loved it, doctors loved it. So you can consume the medicine, but your expiry date will never be lost. The corners are rounded. You also have spaces here to annotate. Is it morning consumption, afternoon, night? So all of these changes come at a cost, but it demonstrates the brand intent of being patient-centric. And it comes from the voice of the consumer. So again, it is about empathy, but it is walking empathy forward. You have to walk it forward through feasibility, through business viability. So the cough mixture bottle that we had proposed after listening to the lady's story was this. Obviously, highly sexy design, but not feasible to produce. So we come back to the bottle form that exists, but within that, how do we retain the essence of what we found? Now that is another challenge of a designer. You need to work with feasibility. Next slide, please. So this is the IDEO framework, but this is a BCG version of it. But essentially, as designers and when we're in the space of research, we're looking at desirability. What is desirable? And this is a framework by IDEO, but again, repurposed by many people. Then obviously we look at what is the business viability. As you saw in the medicine packs I shared, we got to figure out if we do this, what's the impact, business impact we're going to do. And thirdly, is it feasible? Getting rounded corners on packs was actually a machine change part job we had to do. We had to get new machines for that to make it feasible. So, and then that is, IDEO's framework, simplified version of this. So what I'm trying to say is when you think about the role of a researcher today, it's not just about uncovering unmet needs. It's very important to do so. And as somebody else, Prachi, you talked about, it's not just enough to uncover unmet needs. You have to synthesize and present it in a way that is consumable. That's also an art that one has to master. And the third is, how do you create conviction to take this forward? Otherwise, it will die, in the lap of the marketing managers and everyone else. So that's the learnings from this. Next slide, please. The other story that's very, very interesting, how much time, please? 5 minutes? Okay. I don't know how many slides I have left, so anyway. So Airbnb, of course, is a fascinating story, but the takeaway here is it's okay to do things that don't scale. When you're working in the space of innovation, you need to understand that, it's okay to make mistakes. You'll do some things that only a few people love, and it's okay, and this is something, a philosophy Airbnb has always followed. It's amazing. The pivot that they got was, when they started out, they did not know why people were not signing up on their platform or why many people are not coming. And they realized after looking at the data that it's basically because they have very inconsistent images. So they did something that did not scale. They actually went to New York and they went to the homes of the people who had put up their houses on Airbnb and they shot the photographs themselves. Not a very scalable thing to do, but the impact of that was phenomenal. And let the video that follows next by one of the founders of Airbnb talk about it.
We pull up the 20 hosts and search results, and we realize something, that the photography, the images of their listings are actually not very good. So we kind of have this realization, we can solve that problem. We know how to take a good photo, but it's not scalable. That's the thing, is that up until this point, we had tried to solve problems in a scalable way, which I think I would call like some of the mythology of Silicon Valley, is that you have to solve problems in a scalable way. That one line of code has to meet the needs of hundreds, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, or maybe millions of people. So Paul Graham comes along and basically gives us this message, which was the single greatest piece of advice we ever got. Go meet your people. Do things that don't scale. It'll teach you. You'll learn from it. So we fly to New York that weekend. We rent a camera with a wide-angle lens, and we go from door to door throughout Manhattan and Brooklyn. So here we are in the environment of our customers, now watching them use our product in real time. And we're seeing a lot of things that we didn't know were problems. We got so close that we got to step into their shoes for a moment and see the world through their eyes and really see the pain points that they were feeling. And that to me is that's the basics of innovation. You take an enlightened, empathetic point of view for your customers, you combine it with your own unique point of view of the world to create something new. And you know what happened because of this? They started using the word love in the same sentence as Airbnb. They started telling their neighbors, their friends, their family members, their coworkers. And so two things started to happen simultaneously. The amount of choice started to go up, and the quality of that choice went up as well. And when a new host came to the site, they said, oh, well, I guess I need to have really nice photos to be in the part of this marketplace. And we started to see the number of reservations go up.
So basically, it's about, sometimes following your heart, doing things that do not scale. But one key takeaway that was Joe Gebbia and Brian Jeske, the other founder, talks about this as well. Build something that people really love. It can be a small set of people. Don't go for scale right at the start. So, working with empathy, building something that people love requires a lot of kindness. So it requires you walking empathy forward. And that to me is, the return on kindness you can generate. So next one, please. This, a lot of the MBA students, if there are any MBA students here, might have gone through. Great example of Gillette. Does anybody here know this case study of Gillette guard razor? Yeah, you do. Amazing story, right? So Gillette acquired, P&G acquired Gillette in 2005. Next slide, please. They, had almost an 80% market share in the US in 2010. So that's about 4 out of 5 razors was a Gillette razor. They came to India. They said, listen, we need to design something for India. And we know Indian men have coarser beards. They tend to shave after some time. So what they did was they had this fancy design unit in Boston. They had them design a safety razor. No, next previous slide. So no, yeah, that's one. So they had them design a safety razor that they thought would work very well in India, cause a beard. So let's have this sort of device that pushes after you shave, there's a kind of knob that pushes out the hair trapped between the blades, and then again you have a very clean razor. And they designed it in Boston. They said, fantastic product, will work very well in India. And how did they test it? They tested it with MIT students, Indian MIT students who were studying in Boston. And they said, oh, great, this really works very well. Launched it in India, product completely failed. Why? They said, listen, the CEO said, listen, we need to go there to understand. They came here with a team of 30 people, and what they understood was, they looked at how shaving actually happens in India. People shave in the dark, they shave with 1 cup of water. Their main concern is not 3 blades or 4 blades, it's about how do I not cut myself in the dark. So they learned all of this, and they were completely shocked, because how were they testing that other razor in Boston? They had this faucet running, a huge stream of water to clean the blades. You don't have all that kind of stuff, in the context that you're trying to sell. And all of these insights actually led to the product called Gillette Guard, which had a couple of innovations. Firstly, it was extremely cheap. It was 80% cheaper than the Vector, which was the previous razor. It has a small safety comb that untangles the beard. The blades were very cheap, and they created a grip that was designed to accommodate variety of hand sizes and a small hole in the handle so you could hang it up, because that's what they saw the people were doing in India. And the result of this was, the next slide please, that in 3 years, they had a dominant market share. And this is because they came down to the ground to understand, what is it that we're trying to do in India? What is the product we want to make for the country, right? Next slide, please. A small Gillette promo video, but I think it's good. Yeah, you can just play that. What this says, when you talk to people, listen completely.
Observing, listening, even living with people wherever they are. A deep understanding of people is the power behind purposeful innovation. Take razors. For the millions of men in India, choosing a razor isn't as simple as it sounds. Many sources of information, many forms of inspiration, many ways to try, many ways to buy. Gillette's unique understanding, from listening completely to Indian men and women from all walks of life, led to a more comprehensive collection of insights and shaving products that are bringing Gillette's trusted name to more men across India. From the close comfort of Gillette Mach 3, to the speed of Gillette Vector, to the safety and value of Gillette.
Yeah, so that's the message. I mean, the point is you got to come down to the context to understand, right? And here's what the VP of Gillette had to say, that coming down to India with his team really made the difference. And therefore, coming down to meet your patrons is absolutely key. Next slide, please. Now, I'll just wind up with this. So how do you do this? I mean, these are my learnings. It's a fantastic book by A.G. Lafley, who was the CEO of P&G. And P&G was an amazing team, an organization that really looked at innovation back in the day, the innovation attic. So they really were, key proponents of design thinking before the term was coined. When we started Studio 5B at Dr. Reddy's, we were very fortunate to have, the head of the innovation attic at P&G be one of our, mentors, Claudia Kochka. So this book is an amazing book. Essentially, it tells you about, what is critical in strategy. It's really about where do you want to play and how you're going to win where you want to play. So you can look at this framework. It's called Cascade of Choices, but I think it's very, very important, because as researchers, as designers, it's our job to look at business and ask them, listen, what is your winning aspiration? What do you want to do? Whether it's through workshops or however you uncover this knowledge, where do you want to play and how will you win? So our research is informed by all of this. Next slide, please. Now, I've tried to look at, based on the work we've done at the studio, we tried to look at how do you bring together this framework along with design thinking, right? So the typical double diamond of design thinking, and there are multiple frameworks, right? You've got a discover phase, and you've got a design phase, you've got ethnographic research, opportunity mapping, et cetera, that cuts across these stages. But if you were to look at, breaking this down into a set of actions that you can do with your teams, it's really about, and this is from a particular project, so the timelines can change. But if you look at the playing to win framework and look at, what is the secondary research piece as researchers doing for you, it's really telling you, what is the winning aspiration of the business team and what does the lay of the land look like. And then when you conduct primary research, you become much, much clearer about the where to play. And then typically you will have a moment where you'll pause, you'll share out with the business team to understand, how do we map out the opportunities together. And that really takes you to discussions where you begin to talk about, how will we win here and what capabilities and systems we need to have in place to win. So that in a way is, trying to marry design thinking with, the where to play, how to win strategy. And that's what we've been doing at the studio. Chinmay will be privy to that. But I think I'm putting you to sleep, Chinmay. Your eyes are shutting. Huh? That's bad news. Huh? Okay. So next slide, please. So I think a very simple framework that I like to look at is, empathy and kindness is the larger world. We have patrons who are the users. I like to call them patrons. They may be new patrons. They may be potential patrons or patrons. They're patrons, they're partners, and there's the planet, right? Yes, and I think you spoke about Victor Papanek. Back in 1971, I think in the 70s, he wrote Design for the Real World, then The Green Imperative. He's been talking about the planet forever, right? And it's very, very important now with the ECG kind of conversations and sustainability related conversations. Trump doesn't believe in that, that's something else. But I think at the intersection of this, you have humane innovation. And next slide, please. There's a fantastic quote by a British author. So, if you can be anything, you should be kind, because there's value to kindness. And that's what I believe in, and that's what I want to share with you all. So with that, next slide. Thank you very much. And thank you to my controller.